You left me to die. My voice didn't shake as I spoke those words. Standing on my front porch in the crisp autumn air, I watched their expressions change. Nathan, my husband of 22 years, and Ethan, our son who had just turned 19 when they walked away. 6 years had passed since that day, and now here they were, drawn back by the scent of money like vultures to carrion. I'm Amber, and this is a story about betrayal, survival, and the perfect revenge. 6 years ago, my world shattered in a doctor's office. I was 43, married to Nathan, living what I thought was the perfect life. We had met in college. He was the charming, dependable type who remembered anniversaries and brought home flowers just because. At least, that's what I believed. The lump appeared during a routine self-exam. I almost brushed it off as nothing, but something in my gut told me to get it checked. The doctor's expression changed the moment he felt it. Stage 2 breast cancer. Those words hung in the air like a death sentence. I sat Nathan and Ethan down that evening. I remember every detail, the trembling in my voice, the silence that followed my words, the way Ethan stared at the floor. Nathan put his hand on my shoulder and said, "We'll get through this together." It sounded rehearsed, mechanical. I wanted to believe him. The next few weeks became a whirlwind of appointments, biopsies, scans, and decisions. My oncologist was straightforward: surgery followed by chemotherapy and radiation. It would be brutal, but I was prepared to fight. I had no choice. At first, Nathan drove me to every appointment. Ethan kept his headphones in most of the time, barely speaking. I chalked it up to shock, maybe fear. Give them time, I told myself. But time didn't heal, it revealed. 2 months into treatment, everything changed. Nathan became distant. He'd sit on the opposite side of the room, glued to his phone. He stopped asking how I felt, stopped touching me. One night, I overheard him on the phone, whispering in the guest room. "It's just so hard, you know? She's not the same anymore." I didn't sign up for this. I confronted him the next morning. His face went pale. He didn't deny it. "I can't do this anymore, Amber," he said. This isn't a life." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I mean, I don't want to watch you waste away. I want to live. I've given you years of my life. I deserve happiness too." It felt like a slap. No, worse, a betrayal deeper than any wound. 2 days later, he packed a bag. Ethan followed him without looking back. He didn't say, just slammed his bedroom door, dragged his suitcase down the hall, and left. I sat in my hospital gown on the edge of the bed, the chemo still pumping through my veins, and realized I was truly alone. But what Nathan didn't know, what they didn't know, was that I had spent years working tirelessly. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was 17, leaving me a small inheritance. I had invested wisely, built a successful accounting business, and owned the house outright. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, independent. And I was still alive. It would have been easier to give up, to let the sickness win. But that's not who I am. In the darkness of those lonely nights, as my hair fell out in clumps and my reflection became a stranger, I made myself a promise: if I survived this, I would come back stronger than ever. And I would never let anyone treat me like I was disposable again. The days after Nathan and Ethan left blurred together. Mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there. The silence of the house felt like a second illness, heavier than chemo, more suffocating than any bandage. But something unexpected happened. People I barely knew started to step in. Mrs. Wilson from next door began dropping off hot soup every other night. My old friend Melissa, who I hadn't seen in years, heard about my diagnosis and showed up with groceries and a stack of feel-good movies. A local church group offered to take me to appointments when I was too weak to drive. One afternoon, as I sat wrapped in a blanket on the front porch, I got a call from the cancer center. They had assigned me a volunteer caregiver, a retired nurse named Catherine. She was in her 60s, brisk but kind, with no patience for self-pity. "I'm not here to feel sorry for you," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder during our first meeting. "I'm here to help you fight." And that's exactly what she did. Catherine made sure I stuck to my medications, dragged me to every appointment, and pushed me, gently but firmly, to move, eat, and even laugh on days when all I wanted to do was disappear. Slowly, the fog began to lift. But even as my body started responding to treatment, the emotional wounds still throbbed. I'd catch myself scrolling through old family photos, pausing on pictures of Ethan grinning at his high school graduation, Nathan's arms proudly around him. We looked so happy. But were we? Or had I just been too busy being the glue that held everything together? One day, I received a letter in the mail. My stomach flipped when I saw the handwriting. It was Ethan. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a, "How are you, Mom?" It was a brief note asking if I could co-sign on a private loan for a car he wanted. I burned the letter in the kitchen sink and watched the smoke curl into the air like an exorcism. That was the moment I stopped waiting. Stopped hoping for reconciliation. They weren't coming back. Not for me. Maybe one day they'd show up for something from me, but never for me. With that truth came clarity. I turned the guest room into an office. Started freelancing again, light work at first. Bookkeeping for small businesses, tax prep. I became just Amber, not Amber the woman who got abandoned by her husband and son. Catherine encouraged me to document my journey, so I began journaling every night. My entries started as raw, tear-streaked confessions but slowly turned into affirmations. One entry read, "They left, but I stayed. I stayed and fought. And that makes me powerful." By the 18-month mark, I was in remission. My hair had started growing back in soft silver wisps. I treated myself to a modest celebration, just me, Catherine, and Melissa. We laughed, cried, and toasted with sparkling cider. Then came the call that would change everything. My great-uncle Richard had passed away. He was a reclusive man I hadn't spoken to in over 15 years, but we'd written letters now and then. He admired my independence, he once said. He never had children and had never remarried after his wife passed. To my complete shock, he had left his entire estate to me. Property, stocks, investments, an offshore account. After taxes and fees, $4.8 million. I sat in stunned silence when the lawyer gave me the figure. That kind of money could change your life, or someone else's. And I knew, deep in my bones, it would draw them back. Nathan. Ethan. The people who once left me behind for dead. They'd come sniffing around again. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't the same woman anymore. And the house they remembered? It no longer felt like home. But it would be the perfect stage for the surprise they never saw coming. It started with the little things. Looking back, I should have seen the signs long before cancer tore our family apart. Nathan had always been the perfect husband on the surface. He played his role well, the supportive spouse, the devoted father. But there were cracks in the facade, hairline fractures I'd chosen to ignore. The way he'd withdraw when things got difficult. How he'd retreat to his study during arguments, claiming he needed space to process. His inability to handle any kind of emotional distress. The day after they left, I found his credit card statements in the study. Lunch dates at expensive restaurants. Hotel charges in the middle of the week. Gifts from jewelry stores that had never made their way to me. The betrayal had started long before my diagnosis. Cancer just gave him the excuse he needed to walk away. Catherine found me sitting on the study floor, surrounded by papers, laughing through tears. "You know what's funny?" I said, waving one of the statements. "He spent more on these lunch dates than on my chemotherapy copays." She didn't say anything, just sat down beside me and started gathering the papers. "Some people show their true colors when the paint starts to chip," she finally said. "Better to see it now than waste more years on a facade." But it was Ethan's betrayal that cut the deepest. I'd raised him to be compassionate, to stand up for what was right. I remembered the boy who'd cry over injured birds, who'd give his lunch money to classmates who couldn't afford to eat. When had he become this cold stranger who could walk away from his dying mother? One evening, about 3 months after they left, I got a call from Nathan's sister, Marie. She just found out what had happened. He told everyone you asked for space, she said, her voice shaking with anger. That you wanted to focus on your treatment without distractions. That lying bastard. The story unraveled from there. Nathan had crafted a careful narrative. He was the devoted husband who'd been pushed away by a wife who'd become bitter and difficult during her illness. Ethan was the innocent child caught in the middle. They were the victims in this story, not the villains. Ethan's been staying at Nathan's new place, Marie continued. He's got him enrolled in that fancy private college Nathan always wanted him to attend. Bought him a car too. Of course. Nathan wasn't just taking my son, he was buying his loyalty. The next blow came when I discovered they'd emptied our joint savings account. $30,000, gone. Nathan had transferred it out the day before he left. There was a note from the bank, as requested by joint account holder. I called our family lawyer, a man who'd handled our taxes for years. He seemed uncomfortable when I explained the situation. Yes. Nathan consulted me about this last month, he admitted. He wanted to know his legal options regarding the house and other assets in case you didn't survive the treatment. My hands went numb. They hadn't just abandoned me, they'd been planning for my death, counting on it, maybe even hoping for it. That night, I wrote in my journal, they see me as a dying woman. I'll show them how the dead can rise. The hits kept coming. Nathan filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The papers arrived with a sticky note attached, let's make this easy. You keep the house, I keep my pension and investments. As if he was being generous, offering me the house I'd bought with my own money years before we married. His lawyer started sending letters about Ethan's college tuition. They wanted me to contribute, claiming it was my parental obligation. The same son who couldn't be bothered to visit his sick mother now wanted her money for tuition. I learned more from Marie's occasional calls. Nathan had moved in with someone, a younger colleague from his department. They'd been close friends for years. She was everything I wasn't anymore, healthy, vibrant, unscarred. She was good with Ethan too, Marie said, though she spat the words like they tasted bitter. She takes him shopping, helps with his college applications. Playing mommy with your credit card, no doubt. I remembered the jewelry store charges on Nathan's statements and felt sick. The betrayal had metastasized, spreading through my family like the cancer in my body. But while the doctors could fight one, I had to handle the other on my own. Catherine watched me changing one day, her nurse's eyes cataloging the surgery scars, the burn marks from radiation, the bruises from countless needle sticks. Battle scars, she said firmly. Each one is proof you're stronger than whatever tried to kill you. I looked in the mirror. Even betrayal? Especially betrayal. I threw myself into recovery with renewed determination. Every milestone became a victory not just over cancer, but over their expectations. Each clear scan was a middle finger to their plans for my conveniently timed death. The divorce proceedings dragged on. Nathan's lawyer tried to claim part of my business, arguing that Nathan's income had supported me while I built it. I pulled out tax returns showing I'd been the primary breadwinner for the past decade. The lawyer backed off. Ethan's birthday came and went. I sent a card with a check, not for the car he wanted, but a modest amount. Enough to show I remembered, not enough to suggest forgiveness. He cashed it without acknowledgement. Then came the day I overheard two nurses at the cancer center discussing Nathan. That's the one whose husband left her mid-treatment, right? But get this, his new girlfriend's showing off an engagement ring. The ink's barely dry on his divorce papers. I went home and did something I hadn't allowed myself to do in months. I looked him up online. There they were, smiling for the camera at some faculty event. Nathan, the woman I assumed was Jessica, and Ethan, looking every bit the perfect family. My replacement was already fully installed. The caption mentioned their upcoming wedding. They'd chosen a date, the weekend of what would have been our 23rd anniversary. I shut down my computer and walked to the bedroom where Catherine had helped me fight through the worst days of chemo. The room still held a hospital bed, though I hadn't needed it in months. I'd kept it as a reminder, a monument to what I'd survived. Time for this to go, I told Catherine when she arrived the next morning. She helped me dismantle it. As we worked, she asked, what changed? I'm done being the sick woman they left behind, I said. Time to become the healthy woman they'll wish they hadn't crossed. We donated the bed to the cancer center. I redecorated the room in shades of deep blue and silver, colors I'd always loved but Nathan had dismissed as too bold. I bought a luxurious king-sized bed, taking up space unapologetically. The transformation of the house continued. I painted walls, replaced furniture, erased every trace of the family that had abandoned me. The only photos I kept were from before, my parents, my childhood, my graduation. The life I'd built before Nathan, the foundation I'd returned to. Marie called with updates I hadn't asked for but needed to hear. Nathan and Jessica's wedding was all anyone in the family talked about. They'd bought a house in an exclusive neighborhood. Ethan would be living with them while attending college nearby. He's telling everyone this is his fresh start, she said. As if the last 22 years were just a rough draft he could crumple up and throw away. I thought about fresh starts as I rebuilt my life. Each small victory felt sweeter because they weren't there to see it. My hair grew back thicker than before. I gained back the weight I'd lost, plus muscle from the exercise routine Catherine insisted on. My business flourished as clients returned and referred others. The house felt different too. No longer a mausoleum to a dead marriage, but a space that breathed and lived. I hosted dinner parties for my growing circle of friends, other survivors from my support group, neighbors who'd helped during treatment, colleagues who'd kept my business running when I couldn't. One night, as we sat around my dining room table drinking wine and sharing stories, I realized something: this was what family looked like. Not the perfect facade Nathan had insisted on maintaining, but real people who showed up when it mattered. Catherine noticed the change in me. "You're not just surviving anymore," she said one day. "You're thriving." I thought about Nathan's words the day he left: this isn't a life. He'd been right, but not in the way he meant. That life, the one where I dimmed my light to make him comfortable, where I accepted less than I deserved, that hadn't been living. The call about Uncle Richard's estate came just as I was finishing my last round of maintenance therapy. Perfect timing, as if the universe had waited for me to be fully armed before the next battle. I knew the money would bring them back. Nathan and Ethan, drawn by the scent of inheritance like sharks to blood. They'd come expecting to find the same weak woman they'd abandoned, too grateful for their return to question their motives. But that woman was gone. In her place stood someone forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by survival. Someone who'd learned that blood ties could be toxic, that true family didn't walk away when things got hard. Let them come, I thought, looking around at my transformed home. Let them see what they gave up. Let them want back in. Because this time, I would be the one closing the door. The black sedan had been parked outside my house for 3 days. Nathan was never one for subtlety when he wanted something. The news about Uncle Richard's inheritance had predictably drawn him out of the shadows. I let him watch. Let him see me going about my life, stronger and more confident than the woman he'd left. I went to my office each morning in tailored suits, had lunch with clients where his car could clearly see me thriving. Living the life he'd said I couldn't have. The first move came in the form of an expensive cream envelope delivered by courier. Inside was an invitation to Nathan and Jessica's wedding, scheduled for what would have been our anniversary. A handwritten note was attached. "Amber, I know we have much to discuss. Perhaps we could meet for coffee? There are some financial matters regarding Ethan's education that need attention. Nathan." The next day, a second letter arrived from Ethan. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I know I handled things badly when you were sick. I was young, scared, and Dad was, well, you know how persuasive he can be. I miss you. Can we talk? Ethan." I read both letters to Catherine over coffee. She snorted. "Amazing how inheritance money clears up family estrangement." Indeed. I picked up Ethan's letter. Notice he doesn't actually apologize. Just explains why his behavior wasn't really his fault. Nathan showed up at my office unannounced 3 days later. He'd aged, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes that spoke of stress rather than distinguished maturity. "Amber." He tried for warm familiarity. "You look incredible." Cancer-free tends to have that effect. I kept my voice cool, professional. What can I do for you, Nathan? I've been trying to reach you. About Ethan's tuition. Yes, the son who couldn't be bothered to visit his dying mother now wants her money for college. How is that my concern? His face tightened. He's still your son. Biology doesn't make a family. You taught him that lesson beautifully when you walked out. That's not fair. We were all going through a difficult time. No, Nathan. I was going through a difficult time. You were going through a midlife crisis and decided a younger model would solve it. He flushed. Jessica has nothing to do with this. Jessica has everything to do with this. Those hotel charges on your credit card didn't manifest themselves. That hit home. He hadn't known I'd found the statements. That was complicated. Actually, it was very simple. You're just not used to being the villain in the story. I leaned forward. Tell me, does Jessica know you were planning your exit strategy while I was still in chemotherapy? Does she know you consulted lawyers about inheritance rights in case I died? The color drained from his face. Remember Donald, our old family lawyer? He has an attack of conscience. Told me everything. I smiled. Apparently, he doesn't like men who abandon their dying wives. After he left, I set my plan in motion. First, I leaked details of Nathan's pre-death financial planning to his university's ethics board. Anonymous emails with documentation showing how a respected professor had planned to profit from his wife's expected death while she underwent cancer treatment. My lawyer sent formal letters to both Nathan and Ethan, outlining every financial transaction, every credit card charge, every consultation about my possible death. Copies went to Jessica's parents, prominent members of their church community, and key members of Nathan's department. The carefully constructed narrative he'd built began to crumble. The devoted husband forced away by a difficult wife became the man who'd planned his exit while his wife fought for her life. The innocent son became the young man who'd abandoned his mother for a car and college tuition. I announced a major donation to the Cancer Center, a new wing dedicated to supporting patients abandoned by family during treatment. The press release included my story, not naming names but providing enough details that anyone in academic circles could connect the dots. Local papers picked up the story. Cancer survivor turns personal tragedy into hope. The photos showed me looking elegant, sophisticated, surrounded by supporters. Not a victim, but a victor. Ethan showed up one rainy evening. He looked younger than his 25 years, standing on my porch like a lost boy. Mom, please. Let me explain. Explain what? How you followed your father without a backward glance. How you couldn't be bothered to call or visit during 3 years of treatment. How you only remembered you had a mother when you wanted money for a car. I was young. You were 19. Old enough to know right from wrong. Dad said it would be easier if we made a clean break. That seeing you sick would just hurt everyone more. And that made sense to you? Abandoning your mother during cancer treatment because it might make you sad to see her fight for her life? He had no answer for that. Go home, Ethan. Go back to the life you chose. The one without a sick, inconvenient mother to drag you down. The inheritance, he started, will go to people who deserve it. Every penny. His face hardened, Nathan's expression on my son's features. You're just being bitter. No, I'm being just. Actions have consequences. You made your choice 6 years ago. This is mine. The next day, I called my lawyer. Start the paperwork. I want everything transferred by the end of the week. The house would become a sanctuary for cancer patients abandoned by family during treatment. The inheritance would fund cancer research and support programs. A trust would be established to help patients with legal fees when spouses tried to abandon them during treatment. The wedding was canceled 2 weeks later. Jessica's parents had withdrawn their support after learning the full story. Nathan's tenure review was under consideration. The perfect life he tried to build on the ashes of our family was crumbling. I sent him one final message, a copy of the trust documents showing where every penny of Uncle Richard's money would go. With it, a note. You left me to die. Instead, I lived. And now you get to watch as I give away everything you came back for. Consider it my wedding gift. Nathan's carefully crafted academic reputation lay in ruins, his dreams of tenure fading as whispers of his behavior spread through the university community. Ethan's privileged life funded by his father's guilt began to show cracks as Nathan's financial problems mounted. I watched it all from a distance, feeling not triumph but a quiet sense of justice. They had treated me as disposable, counting on my death to fuel their new lives. Instead, I had risen from those ashes stronger, wiser, and capable of a revenge served not hot with anger, but cold with calculated precision. Catherine found me in the garden one evening, planning the renovations that would turn my home into a sanctuary. Was it worth it? She asked. Making them face what they did? I looked at the flowers blooming where I'd once been too weak to walk. They thought I was dying. They were right, the woman they knew did die. But they didn't expect what would rise in her place. And what's that? I smiled, thinking of the lives that would be helped by the money Nathan and Ethan had coveted. Justice with a purpose. Revenge that heals instead of wounds. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in colors of healing and hope. Tomorrow, the contractors would arrive to begin transforming my house into a home for others who needed strength to fight their battles. Nathan and Ethan had sought to profit from my expected death. Instead, they would watch as their greed became a gift to others. That was a revenge sweeter than any inheritance could buy. 1 year later, I was preparing for the Lawrence Recovery Center's opening ceremony when Catherine burst into my office, her face pale. "You need to see this," she said, handing me her phone. The article detailed Nathan's downfall, caught embezzling research funds to cover mounting debts. The university's investigation had uncovered years of financial misconduct. He was facing criminal charges, and Jessica, his fiancée, had been implicated in the scheme through her position in the finance department. That evening, my office phone rang. The number was blocked. "Mom." Ethan's voice sounded broken. "Jessica's pregnant, but there are complications. Dad's assets are frozen, and insurance won't cover the specialized care she needs." The irony was perfect. Nathan, who'd abandoned his wife during cancer treatment, couldn't help his pregnant fiancée get medical care. "And you're calling me because you have the money. You could help." I laughed, a cold sound. "Like you helped me during chemo? When I was vomiting blood alone in my bathroom?" But later that night, Catherine's words echoed in my mind: the best revenge isn't making others suffer, it's showing them what real strength looks like. The next morning, I arranged for Jessica to be admitted to the best high-risk pregnancy unit in the state, not under Nathan's name, but as the center's first emergency case. Not for them, but because I refused to let an innocent life suffer for their sins. 2 months later, Jessica delivered a healthy baby girl named Hope. Nathan wasn't there, he was in court, pleading guilty to reduced charges. He got 3 years in a minimum security prison. Jessica received probation for early cooperation. Then came the twist. One rainy evening, Jessica appeared at the center, baby in arms, wearing worn jeans instead of her usual designer clothes. "I have nowhere else to go," she said simply. I looked at the sleeping baby and thought about cycles of abandonment and redemption. "There's a room available in the family wing," I heard myself say. Catherine raised an eyebrow when I told her, but understood. "You're not doing it for Jessica." "No. I'm doing it because 6 years ago, I learned that sometimes we need strangers to show us more kindness than family." The center flourished, expanding to 2 more locations. My business grew alongside it, helping women rebuild their financial lives after illness or abandonment. Then life offered a different kind of redemption. At a medical conference where I was speaking, I met Dr. James, a leading oncologist who'd lost his wife to cancer years ago. He understood the center's mission on a deeply personal level. James was different from Nathan in every way that mattered. He was genuine, unafraid of difficult emotions. He'd sat with his wife through every treatment, held her hand until the end. "What you've built here," he said one evening in the center's garden, "it's more than a shelter. It's a testament to the human spirit." 6 months later, he proposed in that same garden. I said yes. Our wedding was everything my life had become: authentic, meaningful, surrounded by the family I'd chosen. Catherine was my maid of honor. Center residents filled the garden, celebrating not just a marriage, but the triumph of healing over hurt. Marie attended, bringing news that felt like the closing of a circle. Nathan was teaching basic math to fellow inmates. Ethan was working as a counselor at a youth center, finally learning to help others. Jessica had moved to another state with hope, starting fresh. She'd left a donation to the center with a note, "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." Looking around at my wedding reception, I saw the empire of healing I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. The center was helping hundreds of women find their strength. My business was thriving. And now, I had found a love that didn't demand my silence or submission. James caught my eye across the garden and smiled. This was more than revenge, more than justice. This was transformation. They had left me to die, thinking they were escaping a tragedy. Instead, they had freed me to become who I was always meant to be. Their betrayal had led me to my true purpose, their abandonment to my real family, their cruelty to my greatest strength. Let them live with that knowledge. Let them see me not just surviving, but soaring. Let them understand that sometimes, the best revenge is living a life so full of purpose and love that those who hurt you become nothing more than a footnote in your story of triumph. After all, they had left me to die. Instead, I had truly learned to live.